Well, here's another partnership between broadcasters and cities, Eurovision. And Eurovision 2023 in Liverpool had the largest ever host city impact in the history of this international televised song contest. 300,000 visitors, almost £55 million economic impact across the city region, plus Euro Festival, the largest ever wraparound cultural programme any host city had created to welcome Eurovision, against a background where the BBC was having to host instead of the previous year's winners Ukraine, which was and still is under Russian attack. Now, Eurovision sometimes gets compared to sports mega events like the Olympics or the World Cup, but many of the years I've spent researching this event have been in Hull, UK City of Culture 2017, and that showed me that Eurovision's footprint on host cities was looking more and more like large-scale, city-based cultural events. Indeed, Liverpool's approach harnessed cultural infrastructure and strategy they'd built up through European Capital of Culture 2008 and ever since. So what I'm going to say draws on research commissioned by the British Council in partnership with Liverpool City Council and DCMS to understand Eurovision's cultural relations and soft power impact. The full report and literature review are online. Please go and check them out. I was leading this team. Other core colleagues of ours were David Atkinson at Hull, Barbara Grabber at Brighton, Michael Howcroft now at Glasgow, and they had all researched Hull 2017 directly. What we found with Eurovision 23 was this first time two countries had ever cooperated so closely to deliver Eurovision. Although there was a sad underlying reason, partners didn't forget that, led to innovative new ways of reflecting what cultural relations and international partnerships mean to this event through creative engagement with the idea of place. A host broadcaster and host city had to find ways of representing two countries and co-produce that with Ukrainian partners. Liverpool's cultural programming drew in artists and organisations that might not otherwise have engaged with this event. And there was such large-scale community participation, it reached up to 2 million people around the city region. This was a new departure for this event's politics of place and highlights the role of international cultural relations in other city events. So our starting point for understanding place in Eurovision was this event allows every participating entry, but even more so its hosts, to communicate their narratives of identity to a huge international audience. The European Broadcasting Union, which governs the contest, found 162 million people watched Eurovision 23. Hosts become the symbolic heart of Europe for the event period. This has been particularly powerful for peripheralised places. We've seen East Mediterranean and East European broadcasters invest dramatically in Eurovision since the millennium. This is why, and in fact, Ukraine's been the most successful of those. There's a lot of research on how states and other actors try to use sports mega events for soft power purposes, or how campaigners use them for leveraging human rights awareness. That's useful for understanding Eurovision, and then this contest's long-standing LGBTQ+ significance gives that an extra twist. But in fact, this is an international competition structured around a cultural product. It demands to be understood through insights from sporting and cultural events. Our literature review very much showed this. And indeed, that points to the kinds of opportunities for sharing wider learning across sporting and cultural events that Spirit of 2012 have proposed, for instance, with their ideas for an events data observatory. Meanwhile, Eurovision host cities have been delivering more and more place-based programming, paying more and more attention to place-based visitor experience. Kyiv might have had the very first live music stage for visitors for its first Eurovision in 2005. Oslo in 2010 had the first Eurovision fan village with live performances for guests. They'd picked that up from the FIFA Men's World Cup in Germany. Every host city now delivers a fan village, it has to. And if cities have Cities of Culture know-how about visitor experience and place branding, they've brought it to Eurovision. 17 cities have been European Capital of Culture and Eurovision host cities, including Liverpool. So Liverpool then had about 15 years' worth of infrastructure and strategy it brought to Eurovision 23. But it couldn't just be Liverpool's story, just like it couldn't just be a UK story for the BBC. All of those opportunities to communicate strategic narratives that hosts usually get, Ukraine had lost them just when it most needed to engage audiences with Ukrainian culture and heritage and showcase Ukrainian professionals' world-class contributions. The EBU, the BBC and Ukrainian TV all agreed the event still had to showcase Ukrainian culture within the TV show's non-political rules. The worst thing a UK partner could do would be to look like it was taking all the glory. So this demanded partnership and co-production on a scale beyond the cultural relations that Eurovision involves every year. What emerged was a model of promoting the partnership of Liverpool and Ukraine, with UK PLC far in the background. And this was summed up in the United by Music branding developed by UK and Ukrainian agencies. The narrative synergy between Liverpool and the context of Eurovision 23 that Culture Liverpool first expressed during the bid process was important in giving this cohesion. So, Liverpool brings world-famous music heritage through the Beatles, but it wants to promote its vibrant music sector now. It's got a party reputation here, but it wants to communicate that friendliness internationally, and it wants to communicate all its logistical expertise in hosting large-scale events. And it had to deliver its share of the responsibility to redress what Ukraine had lost through not being able to host. Culture Liverpool identified this responsibility resonated with emotive themes in civic identity, solidarity against injustice, including the Hillsborough campaign. This is a history of welcome and sanctuary as an international port city, memory of the Blitz, and a lot of local lived experience of supporting Ukrainians since 2022. So we're talking about cities today. We'll focus on how Culture Liverpool managed co-production with Ukrainian partners, but there's a parallel intertwined story for the BBC. Their chief partner was the Ukrainian Institute in Kyiv, Ukraine's cultural relations organisation, their equivalent of the British Council. Now, they and the British Council Ukraine office had already been working on a UK-Ukraine season of culture for 2022. That had to be drastically reworked to address needs after Russia's full-scale invasion. The British Council's head of arts in Ukraine introduced Culture Liverpool's Eurofestival team to the Ukrainian Institute. Liverpool's team, importantly, recognised that even as well-meaning British partners, they could still have inaccurate or outdated ideas of Ukrainian culture. They opened their minds to learning what Ukrainian partners thought was most important to get across. And behind the scenes, that route through to the Ukrainian Institute through the British Council ended up creating significant value, leading to the atmosphere delegations and visitors experienced on the ground in May 23. So what was on the ground? 19 of the 24 commissions for Eurofestival ended up being UK-Ukrainian partnerships, from fun, accessible installations inspired by Ukrainian culture, like the Soloveitko Songbird inflatables, to more introspective art, dealing with the realities of Russia's attack on Ukraine. A video installation in Liverpool Cathedral based on refugees' rail journeys across Ukraine. A self-guided audio trail at key city centre sites, which, because it was based on QR codes, it was opt-in, could present more challenging content about violence, war and colonialism. Indeed, Eurofestival ended up helping create space in the city-wide event for important narratives about Ukrainian experience during the war and why culture and heritage become targeted in wars of aggression. The TV event couldn't express that, but it was vital to Ukrainian stakeholders who felt it was existentially important to communicate these stories and make people understand there's more to Ukraine than war and suffering which had been forced on it. So Liverpool and the BBC, showing they understood this, built important trust. Liverpool created education and community programming around Eurovision on a scale no past city had attempted. Liverpool approaches the events this way. There was a mayoral commitment to social value. This brought in extra funding, made it more relevant to the National Lottery or Spirit. The community grant scheme inspired unique, unexpected ideas, sometimes even drawing out more connections between Ukraine and global majority diasporas. We could maybe have seen more than the flagship programming. So cultural relations were happening right down to the grassroots level on Merseyside, and in the TV shows and the flagship programming, professionals from different countries were cooperating and sharing practice for mutual benefit. These were people-to-people cultural relations, and they were also place-based. They took their form because of Liverpool's infrastructure, its identity and heritage, and its communities. Their spontaneous, creative ways of joining in added to the event's affective atmospheres across city space. So what can other city-based events learn from this? Number one, Events' cultural impact extends through local cultural infrastructure and local well-being into international partnerships. Every place has an international story. Make it meaningful. Number 2, long-term thinking matters. For cultural infrastructure and evaluation, we need it in the sector between sports and culture. We need it within cities as well. Number 3, co-production, shared authority, learning from each other are key to successful international creative partnerships based on trust. And 4, host city communities really matter as people-to-people actors in your cultural relations during large-scale events. So take that away, let it inspire what place and international partnerships mean in your city to you. Thank you very much.